like to take a moment and talk about why I think DC has the better martial artists and hand-to-hand combatants. And listen, before everyone gets all hot and heavy and start their debunk videos, I want you guys to know that this is going to just be an opinionated video. I'm going to just express to you guys why I think, in my opinion, DC's martial artists are over Marvel's. Because when it comes down to Marvel and DC, I don't think one company is better than the other. I think that they're equal, but they're different. For example, I think DC does a lot better with its solo titles and characters, while Marvel does a lot better with its team-up and crossover comics. DC does better at their female characters and showcasing them, while Marvel does better with its people of color or characters of different ethnicity. And that's not to say that DC doesn't have great team-up books or great characters of different ethnicity. And that doesn't say Marvel doesn't have good solo titles or great female characters. It's just that the companies tend to focus on different things. And that also goes into the powers and abilities that their characters have. Like, for example, I think Marvel has better telepaths. They focus more on telepathy as a power. They tend to have more telepaths, and their higher-end telepaths are arguably better than DC's. And on the flip side, DC does a lot more when it comes down to speedsters and speed as a whole, whether it be with the Flash and the Flash family or other speedsters such as Superman. They focus on those stories more than Marvel does, and they tend to have a deeper lore and understanding of that power. And I think that's the same thing when it comes down to martial arts in DC Comics. They just simply do it better than Marvel. And guys, don't rage quit. I'm not saying that Marvel doesn't have great martial artists and hand-to-hand combatants, nor am I saying that they don't have great stories tied into that. But ultimately, I think DC does it better and has the better martial artists. I'm going to give you my 3 reasons why. And my 3 reasons are: 1, what does martial arts mean to each company? 2, is statements, lore, in the story. And 3, fights and feats. Let's talk about the first one. What does martial arts mean to each company? I think fundamentally, when it comes down to DC, they treat martial arts and hand-to-hand combat as like a superpower for the character. That their martial arts is their primary form of combat, and other things such as equipment supplement it. While on Marvel's end, they treat martial arts as more of a supplement to the main character's powers or abilities. Let me give you a quick example using my 2 favorite characters from each company. Batman's primary form of fighting is his hand-to-hand combat and his martial arts. Sure, does he have equipment like batarangs, sonics, or gas pellets? Of course he does. But those only supplement his main form of fighting, which is his martial arts and hand-to-hand combat. But when you look at Wolverine, his main form of combat, despite being a master martial artist, is his claws, his healing factor, and his adamantium skeleton. He utilizes those so much that he has a unique fighting style attributed to just using those. His martial arts are only a supplement to his main form of combat. Another thing that kind of ties into that is, if you look at DC's best martial artists, and this is in no particular order, but if you look at this right here, the majority of them have no powers, abilities, or physical enhancements. Batman, Lady Shiva, Dick Grayson, Cassandra Cain, Richard Dragon, Connor Hawk, Damian Wayne, Bronze Tiger, all of them are regular schmegular humans. Sure, do they use some equipment? Yeah, but in terms of their martial arts, they don't have powers, they don't have physical enhancements. The exceptions being, of course, Deathstroke, who's clearly a super soldier, Black Canary, who has her canary cry, which she doesn't use all the time, and then Karate Kid, who has a Legion flight ring that is made of nth metal, which enhances his speed, strength, and durability. Now, if we do the same thing with Marvel, take what many consider to be their best martial artists, and again, in no particular order, the majority of these people here have powers, abilities, are super soldiers, are mutants, or are physically enhanced in some way, shape, or form. Shang-Chi, Iron Fist, Wolverine, Mr. X, Black Panther, Captain America, Taskmaster, Gorgon, Karnak, and Black Widow all have powers, abilities, are a super soldier, a mutant, uses some kind of mystical ability like Ki, or in some way, shape, or form are not regular schmegular humans. The closest thing that you got to that was Elektra and Daredevil, but even they have powers from time to time. I think Daredevil currently does I'm not reading him currently. Again, primary form of combat, their martial arts. Everything else supports that. Whereas their martial arts supports their primary form of combat. The second reason why I have DC martial artists over Marvel is they ultimately have better statements when it comes down to their martial artists, as well as more lore or history with their martial arts. I'm going to use Captain America and Batman as a comparison because they're often compared with each other. But let's take a look at some of Batman's statements to support how good of a martial artist he is. He's a master of all forms of martial arts. The world's most skilled combatant. The most skilled, most determined, most artful fighter in the world. The world's greatest warrior. Master of fighting styles. Widely acknowledged that Batman is the most skilled fighter in the world, possibly the greatest human fighter the world has ever known. Master of every known martial art. Where Captain America does have statements, but his best are adept at every form of hand-to-hand combat, and Kang stating that he's the finest warrior of his age. That's not to say that there aren't more statements for Captain America, but these are his best. Marvel just doesn't commit to the statements when it comes down to their characters. Even the henchmen in DC have better statements than Captain America. And listen, I'm not saying that the League of Assassins would be able to take on Captain America. Like, I'm sure he would be able to run through them. But it's not just statements. Like I said, it comes down to lore and mythos. You can look up the people that have taught Batman, what he's learned from them, and you can also look up the people that he trains with regularly to keep himself sharp. You don't need the statement he's a master of all forms of combat. The story shows it to you. It tells you that. And then finally, we have my third reason, which are feats and fights. And this ties a little bit into the first reason too. We could go back and forth in terms of feats. I could give you a list of feats for Batman. You could probably give me a list of feats for Captain America. But if we look at their fights, a lot more emphasis is put on the martial arts with Batman than it is with Captain America. And I mean solely the martial arts. And this is applied to other characters. I'm just using Batman and Captain America as an example. If you take the fights that many people use to demonstrate how good of a fighter or combatant Batman is, the majority of them, not all, but I would say 90% of them are him just throwing straight hands, utilizing his skill as a martial artist and hand-to-hand combatant. Sure, there are exceptions like a sword fight with Ra's al Ghul or using some batarangs against Deathstroke, but all his fights against Karate Kid, Lady Shiva, Bronze Tiger, Richard Dragon, Wildcat, so on and so forth, are fights of him just using his hands, his pure martial arts. Even when he goes up against multiple opponents, like hundreds of goons, he takes them out just using his martial arts. But in comparison, if we look at the fights that people use to showcase how good of a fighter or combatant Captain America is against Black Panther, Daredevil, Wolverine, Hercules, Shang-Chi, Winter Soldier, the shield's always there. His martial arts just supplements or complements his combat. That shield for Captain America is part of what makes him such a phenomenal combatant. Sure, he's a great martial artist, but he's a much better when he has that shield. Same thing could be said about Wolverine and his claws and his healing factor. His martial arts may support those, but those are what make him such a dangerous combatant. DC's martial artists have to be better. The majority of them are regular humans. They're not super soldiers. They don't have powers. They don't have ki. They don't have claws. They don't have unique enhancements. They may have equipment, but at the end of the day, they're regular humans. Of course, with some exceptions. Marvel martial artists don't have to be as good because their martial arts support what makes them good, which are their powers, their abilities, or their much more advanced technology. And there's nothing wrong with that. And hey, I'm not saying that Captain America, Wolverine, or Black Panther couldn't beat Batman. They totally could. Those fights can go either which way. But they're not beating him because they're better martial artists. They're most likely beating him because they have physical advantages, or maybe an indestructible shield, or maybe an indestructible skeleton with claws, or maybe they have an advanced suit made of vibranium, and various different advanced technologies. But I'm not debating those fights. At the end of the day, I believe DC has the better martial artists. I've given my reasons why, and so far, with respect, no Marvel creator has been able to show me or convince me otherwise.